Thank you, everyone. Hi, I'm Steve Rebel, and this is Andrew Hodgkinson, and we're from RISCOS Open Limited. And we want to talk to you today. We'll give you a very quick overview of what RISCOS Open are all about, but you've probably heard this before, so we won't spend too much time on that. We'll also talk a bit about what we've been doing recently, leading up to today, and then we'll talk about what we're going to be doing in the future. And while we're talking about what we've done recently, we'll also show you the new website, which is almost the same as the old one, but it's been refreshed and updated. So, first of all, RISCOS Open is a not-for-profit organisation, so we don't pay ourselves. We just collect donations from the community and use those donations to fund our activities, like attending shows like today. And our goal is to publish all of the source code to RISCOS and the associated RISCOS applications and disk-based stuff like the boot sequence and the printer stack. And we want to publish that on our website so that any user can download it free of charge and use it on their own machines. We also have some more long-term goals, and we'll talk a bit about those later on. But throughout the last probably 2 years now, a year and a half, 2 years, we've been working our way through all of the source tree, trying to publish all of the code in there and sorting out loads of issues to do with licensing and who owns what, and sorting out the language in the source code to make sure there's no swear words there. And there are plenty, so there were plenty, not in the published courses. Yeah. We did have a top 10 list of all our favourite swearing episodes in all the source code. Some authors seem to be more prolific than others. So yeah, we're working our way through and trying to release both the soft loadable disk-based stuff, so things like Pling Paint and Pling Edit and the printer stack, but we're also trying to release all of the lower level stuff, the stuff at the very bottom of RISCOS, like the kernel and the hardware abstraction layer and the device drivers and all of that stuff. And it's not necessarily stuff that's useful for anyone to just download from our website and just load on their machine and suddenly they'll have a new kernel. It doesn't work quite that easily. But we are trying to make it so that you've got a whole ROM image, and the ROM image is the main built-in bit that sits in your hardware, and that's got the core bit of RISCOS, and then everything on your hard disk is just kind of the additional bits. If we can get to the point where we've published the whole of a ROM image, then hopefully we'll also publish a little tool which allows you to soft load that ROM image on your machine, and so you'll be able to go to our website and free of charge you'll download this little package, you'll install it on your machine, reboot your machine, and you will be running our new version of RISCOS. And then alongside that will be another package which will be all of the disk-based stuff, so it will be the boot sequence and all of the applications, and you can just install that as well. And then hopefully over the months, as people contribute more and more bits to our project, they'll go to our website, they'll get hold of the source code, they'll make their own changes and improvements, feed them back to us. We can just keep adding those back into what we release on our website and allow people to use that free of charge. There are commercial versions of the licensing terms as well, which are, it's all owned by Castle, so anyone who wants to use what we publish for their commercial products, so let's say someone creates their own little native piece of RISCOS hardware and they need an operating system for it, they can come and use our operating system, but they just have to go to Castle first and agree with Castle how many versions of that machine they're going to sell, and just buy some licenses for that. Andrew, did you want to talk a little bit about the website?
Yeah, okay. I'll just run through this quick. I apologise if I'm not really looking at it as a video, so I can see it. So yeah, we've got when you visit the site, you get to the home page straight off. You can get the news section at the top, or the headlines, same thing. Which just tells you a bit about what's going on. I'm sure many of you have already visited and seen this website, but I think we're fully with mobile phone available. And that's our batch 5 release, and you can read more about that. What people might not be too familiar with is some of the sort of tags and extra bits of information that go with it, and the categories and things in the sidebar. These just allow you to sort of search around for all kinds of information. So, for example, you can find out all about press releases by following the press release link and everything, and that will then sort of aggregate all the press release items that we've done. Well, similarly, you can find anything tagged as to the source code by following the link at the bottom. So you can just try to play around with that if you've not seen some of them, the releases in from the history of it. There's also RSS feeds. These are quite common on our site. We've got them all over the place. These are news feeds. They're kind of like mini web pages associated out to your machine. You can choose to subscribe to them. The act of subscribing actually means you have to have some piece of software which understands RSS feeds. Now, there is one available for RISCOS, unfortunately, I forget its name. And there are also various things like if you've got a Mac that Safari understands them, or if you've got any platform, Thunderbird, the mail application understands RSS. And the advantage with those is you can keep track of things. For example, here's an RSS feed for comments on news articles on the website. And it just lists all the comments that occur. Basically, it means that it's a bit like receiving email. You'll see a new comment or a new article appear in Thunderbird or your RSS reader, and that will let you know there's been activity on the site without you having to constantly go and visit it and check for yourself every day.
So it can save you a bit of time by subscribing to these things. If you want to contribute back, we've got a forum where you can discuss all sorts of things. We post general announcements in here. You can do things about wish list, items you might be interested in or not. Just feel free to post something now, spark the discussion. We also
do you find any feature that you want to see added to paint or draw or anything, you can just pop it in our forum and put it in the wish list section.
Speaking of which, you've got features for the paint changes already. People are talking about this stuff already. You can see it's quite popular. Lots and lots of things in there. Again, there's feeds to find out when new information. That's what this little orange icon just up here is talking about. It's a feed for it. You can see what's going on that particular topic. And then if you're finding faults, you can discuss them on the forum, or if you know for sure you've got a fault and you want to lodge it technically if you're into this kind of thing, or just see what's going on, then we've got a fault database. That's the bugs link up here in the header. Which then gives you tickets about all kinds of things, and you can just read about what faults you already know about, progresses, you can comment on them and so on, all that kind of stuff's there. And if you're getting more into the technical side, you can also start looking at our CVS revisions that we've gone through as we're checking things in. So when you go into this link on the left here, this revision stuff, under options, you've got subversion and CVS. CVS is, they're just ways of storing source code basically, and CVS is where all of RISCOS is. So you can have a look at, Dome, was that you see? Two components in the wrong order. So you can have a look at some of the things that we've checked in and keep an eye on activity, which if you're technically minded could be quite of interest, because this is brand new live, the most recent stuff. It may not necessarily be available in an archive on the website yet, and it will certainly be newer than anything you might have on a CD to show. So that's the absolute cutting edge stuff. You can also browse the whole of the source tree here. So you don't have to download something if you've just got a sort of passing interest in the source tree. You can browse it and start looking around. And we've got various things. If we go to Castle, that's where the RISCOS stuff is. And you start getting into the source tree now. Again, technically minded stuff. But it could be interesting if you can have a look at RISCOS sources, and then we go and it just gets bigger and bigger from there as you get into the bulk of it. Lots of things. We've also got a documentation section where users can contribute. So here we have, for example, lots of software information has been added recently. You can find out about the new clipboard module, for example, which is the April clipboard protocol to have been implemented, so you can do essentially cut and paste between different applications. There it is. And these can be edited, updated, contributed to. There's an edit link at the bottom by individual people, so that includes anybody sitting here. Sign up for the site and you can modify it. It's just like some Wikipedia or something.
I have a request on that front. There are lots of components that we've already released on our website, lots of pre-built components, and you can find them from just going to the top of the page and finding the downloads link. And you've got sections like applications and boot sequence stuff and diversions and all of that kind of stuff. Each of these downloads that we've released has an associated page in our wiki of software information about that particular component. But because we've released so many of them, it's more than we've got time for to populate all of these pages with information about each of the applications. So one of the requests I've got for the community at large is if people just register with our site and have a look on there, you can find any components that you're familiar with, like Pling printers or Pling paints, and just help fill in some of these pages by saying, you know, your description, a one-paragraph description of what this is and what the current version number is, because that's already written on the previous page. So if people could help out with that, that would be very useful to us. And it's probably just a 5-minute job per component for one person, but with a whole community of people, they can all get in there and help populate all of those pages for us.
So when you're in the download section, which was one of the links at the top, it shows reference to modules, which is probably the least interesting section.
Applications.
Applications is a better thing. In any of these sections, you'll see these little icon, and they lead you to a page in the documentation section. Steve was describing that you can then help it. Link. You're in there.
So, for example, most of them we've just put, you can probably see here, we've just put a holding page in for every component, and then we've tried to populate a few of them ourselves, and a few people have contributed and done them themselves. But we've just put in what the sort of information is that we want people to add. And so it's just a case of people just filling in the blanks and replacing this bit with other bits. So if anyone can help with that, we would be very grateful. Thank you very much. Just sort out Andrew's technical problem. I'll talk a little bit more about, if you don't mind, I'll talk a bit more about what we've been doing in the recent weeks. We've been publishing more of the source code. Today we've published, or we will be publishing, what we call batch 5, which is our 5th major batch of source code. And this is getting us a long way towards releasing the whole of the Ionix ROM. And there's all kinds of interesting goodies in the latest batch of sources. We've got an Ethernet driver, which is the Ionix Ethernet. It's called EtherK. We've also got the NVIDIA graphics driver. We've got a load of networking modules and that kind of stuff. We've got some hardware device drivers like the mouse and the keyboard and things like that. And parallel. Loads of things. And we've
I'm not sitting on my microphone because I'm like
we've also tried to release all of the build environments into our source control system, which is an important step because previously we've released the build environments as kind of some packaged archives, but it wasn't under any form of source control, so now we've moved it all into CDS like the rest of the sources. So it's quite easy for people to just check out all the build environment, check out all the sources, and they'll have all they need to build all of the desktop applications, apart from the C compiler, which is a commercial product still. But that's just £50, and that can be bought from either us or from Castle. So that's what we've been working on in recent weeks. We have done a new ROM build, which is a RISCOS 5 Ionix ROM build. It's still missing a few components, notably things like LAN manager, ShareFus, and a few other bits. So if you come to our stand, you'll see we've got a big poster, and it's a picture of the ROM image, and all of the modules in it have been labelled. And there's a little bit of white space at the bottom, which is the empty padding in the ROM at the moment. That is the last bit of space of modules that we need to populate before we'll have released an entire Ionix ROM. And the steps needed to get to releasing those modules are just a case of speaking to the various people who own bits of copyright in those modules and just getting the all clear from them to publish the source code. And we're pretty confident that we're going to get that done in the next few months because most of the components that are causing us trouble at the moment are the company involved in them is just one company for a lot of components, and they've already given us the all clear to release them, and it's just a case of dotting the I's and crossing the T's with getting that formally written up and agreed. So hopefully we'll have another pile of modules coming out fairly soon, which will help complete the ROM image. It's worth talking about really why we're doing this, why we're trying to release a ROM. Do you want to talk a bit about that?
You mean for emulation?
Yeah.
What we thought would be a good idea is that there are a lot of people that have used RISCOS in the past that aren't using it now, and maybe might be interested in the project if they could easily run it, and perhaps they haven't got access to RISCOS hardware anymore, and obviously buying a sort of full installation of virtual Acorn is going to be more than they necessarily want to do. Does it work better over here?
Probably.
Yeah. Sort of people behind the pillar can see me, so they can't. So that's one advantage, if people can just play around with it. Also, there are quite a lot of people that use emulators and old systems just because they're interested in older computing platforms. And I've downloaded and played around with Amiga and Atari ST emulators and all sorts of things myself. Never owned an Amiga and an Atari ST, I just do it for fun. So if people can do that easily and cheaply, ideally free, then there's a potential for quite a lot of eyes that haven't looked at RISCOS either recently or indeed at all to see the platform and potentially become more interested in it. And even if you only capture a small percentage of the huge number of people out there that might download something like this, that could bring quite a lot of development to the platform, even if it's just contributing ideas or even taking ideas and putting them in other operating systems. So for that end, the RISC PC emulator RPCEMU, which is an open source emulator a bit similar to Virtual Acorn, would be an obvious choice. It's available for free, it can run on Mac OS, Linux or Windows. It's not anywhere near as finished or polished as Virtual Acorn, it lacks a lot of the integration, but it's enough to get things running and have a play. That would be a great way forward. But in order for that to work, it's a machine emulator, so it expects to boot from a ROM, just like would have been built into the RISC PC it's emulating. Hence, we need to build a ROM image, but we have to build a 32-bit ROM image to make sure that there's various restrictions we have and what we can release. And at this point, it's a bit early to say whether we can build one of those that work, although we're fairly hopeful we will be able to eventually. So the idea is to be able to build essentially RISCOS 5 for your RISC PC, so that you can have the Ionic style operating system and all the hardware. You can run it as an emulator, you can run it on the real machine if you want to soft load it, but in particular we'll be able to offer packages on our website where a sort of a Windows XE or a Mac OS DMG or various different packaging formats for Linux, I guess. You can just download that, run it, install it, bingo, you're up and running with the RISCOS desktop pretty much straight away. And we think that'll be a great way for hobbyists and other people to get more involved, whether or not they actually have a real piece of hardware.
How much?
How much? What? Price-wise? Well, the point is it'll be free because it's not a commercial endeavour.
Virtual Acorn is about £100, right?
Yeah.
So you're saying it's going to be free?
Yeah, so this will be RISCOS 5, which there are various features which RISCOS Limited have added on top of that. Lots of extensions and applications and things, so obviously you wouldn't be getting that, although people may add features like that to the open source projects in time, shared source, I should say. And as I say, there's not as much integration. If you use RPC only, you'll find it's a lot more raw, if you like, than Virtual Acorn. They spent an awful lot of time polishing and integrating it with the host operating system and getting better mouse control and stuff like that. Again, nothing to say that people might not add that to RPC over time, but on the other hand, a bit of competition is no bad thing.
It's going to be free.
Yeah, it'll be free.
It'll be free.
Yeah. But I think if you wanted to use RISCOS on a cross-platform, sort of on the Mac or a Windows, if you wanted to use it seriously, rather than just toying with it for a hobby, if you actually wanted to use artworks and maybe things like impression seriously on it, then you really want to have a close look at Virtual Acorn rather than a free solution, because you'll find it just functions an awful lot better. But of course you'll be able to play with both. I mean, you can always go onto the stand and... Is VN here today? They are, aren't they? I think. Yeah, if the eye can play.
Over time we might find that the R solution the R solution gradually evolves and becomes more advanced and more integrated itself. So hopefully over time you'll increasingly be able to use what we provide as a replacement for this machine. So it's probably worth just summarising that fairly quickly what our goals are to release RISCOS software, just as little downloads of individual applications. That's kind of a short-term goal. But in the long term, we want to release a free emulator, a free version of RISCOS that goes with it, and all of the disk-based stuff like boot secrets and everything. It'll be in a single package, and you'll be able to soft load it on either an Ionix, a RISC PC, or a Windows machine, a Mac machine, or a Linux machine, and you'll have the same version of RISCOS that can run on any of them. And so hopefully that will solve some of the problems of native hardware being harder and harder to find with RISCOS. And what we expect to happen over time is you'll be able to go down to PC World, buy yourself the cheapest chips, Windows machine, and then just go to our website.
One of the Linux ones.
Hopefully you can get a Linux machine.
EPC or something.
But yeah, and then you can go to our website, download the emulator with the RISCOS package installed on it. Just install it on your machine, and then you'll have a RISCOS machine. So that's our long-term goal, is to get to the point where it's easy to do that.
Yeah, and of course, the more people can find a way to contribute to the project in the meantime, then the quicker we'll get there, I guess. Licensing restrictions notwithstanding.
Yeah.
These bits of software we're trying to release.
My question is slightly technical, but there's lots of software on RISCOS that is already emulating something. And there are similar emulators on other platforms. So, for example, I don't know, if you were have a Java program or something like that, the Java runtime system is basically emulating an abstract processor on RISCOS. And you might have something on a Linux machine which is emulating another chip and so on. What are the possibilities with RPC EMU to use native code? I mean, is it possible to be having an emulated task which then goes off and says, right, now run such and such a task on the underlying machine and then come back?
I don't think there's any technical reason why not.
It's like what Uniprint 4 does in Virtual Acorn. So you can say, like, launch this URL in a web browser in Linux or in the Mac Auto. There's no reason why that sort of API can't be added by someone.
Yeah. You can have something like a module which, because essentially the emulator can emulate any hardware that it likes, so it can present some sort of hardware which is essentially a coprocessor. It could do it that way, for example, and you might choose to farm things out that way. So yes, no reason why not. Okay. Well, that's your mic.
I have to ask a question.
Go.
Sorry, I'm not very technical, and I don't know whether you've really already answered this, but you said that you spoke about an RPC emulator, RPC emulator. I was just talking to Druck actually, and he said, "Oh, this isn't the way to go. We should be trying to emulate old machines. We need RISCOS 5, but we need it to run on any hardware." And there needs to be some layer in between that will interface it. And we shouldn't be trying to emulate old machines. Well, so what my question is, in pushing RPC EMU, will it restrict us in any way to the kind of things that ran on a RISC PC?
No, it should perhaps be clear. If we were running a RISC PC ROM on RPCMU, it would be a HALized RISC PC ROM. RISCOS 5 already includes a layer which essentially allows you to port more easily to other ARM-based platforms. So that there is already, it's probably easy to without that. It's already fairly portable, and if you could find an appropriate hardware target, you could port RISCOS 5 to it with relatively little effort. Hardware drivers, perhaps things like graphics, can be more problematic. So the idea that you can have a HALized version of RISCOS running on RISC PC, it's no more bound to a RISC PC than it is to an Ionix or to an emulator or indeed anything else. So it doesn't restrict you. And we certainly hope to see an updated Ionics ROM with shared source components folded back into it, if that's at all possible. Hopefully it will be in the near future, but we can't say for sure. So those that have contributed to the shared source project would then actually see their contributions running for real on an official RISCOS release, we hope. You'd also be able to run that same code on your RISC PC, and indeed if somebody wrote an appropriate PAL, you'd be able to see that code on just about anything else. There are some issues. I mean, one of the popular platforms that's been kicked around in the news groups, how many microphones do I need, I'm not sure, has been ARM8 based, but ARM8 and Cortex, I think it is actually quite a different chip from your common Garden ARM, so there'd be rather a lot more work to do then. So you're still, the same problems supporting RISCOS that have always existed continue to exist in terms of finding an appropriate hardware target. But as far as I can see, by releasing the source code, all of it open with this shared license, then it can only make it easier to introduce RISCOS to new real hardware platforms. And much as I think emulation is an obvious goal for us because it's something we can achieve without external help, and it gets people who aren't interested in spending on hardware able to see RISCOS and play with it, my personal interest is to see somebody pick that up and port it to a piece of hardware, you know, a portable device, something like that. There are so many pieces of ARM hardware out there that even as a hobbyist project, it would surely be an interesting thing for somebody to take. So I totally understand the concern, but our intention is not to move away from physical hardware, but it's simply a community issue to produce versions for hardware if the community so wishes.
Well, we're certainly we're building both RISCOS 5 for the Ionics, which will be either soft loadable on your existing Ionics or it'll be something you program into it to make it work. But we're also intending on building a RISCOS 5 for the RISC PC, as Andrew was saying, so you'll just soft load that on your existing RISC PC. There's no reason why we can't have the exact same image that runs in RPCMU on Linux or Windows or Mac, so it'll be the same RISCOS 5 that you see on the Ionics effectively. One of the things we've published, or we will be publishing today, is the hardware abstraction layer, the HAL, for a RISC PC. So it's a 32-bit RISCOS 5 style HAL for the RISC PC. So with a little bit of work for us, we're going to try and make it so that we can build the rest of RISCOS 5 and integrate it with the HAL, and then you will have a ROM image that you can soft load in the same way that RISCOS Adjust and RISCOS Select have traditionally been soft loaded onto a RISC PC. So already we'll have the existing Ionics HAL, which is already published. We'll have a RISC PC HAL, so there'll be no reason for people who want to port RISCOS onto other hardware platforms to take those two HALs and look at them and study them and understand how the hardware abstraction layer works. And that should be, because there's two of them there now, that should give them a good example of what they need to implement to get RISCOS, as it stands, working on some of the thing.
Sorry, I'm not clear. Sometimes you say it has been released, sometimes you correct yourself and say will. Is the RISC PC HAL out there now, or is that yet to be done?
Okay, the RISC PC HAL isn't on our website as it stands because we're here at this show. But we have done all the work, we've done all the processing, we've archived it all, we've got it in our CDS source control system as our base, but we've not uploaded it onto the website. That's one of the things we might be doing throughout the day. The Ionics HAL is on our website, it's already been there since batch 4, I think.
Right, it's just I was a little bit confused. I saw the announcement before I came out this morning. It says batch 5 released, but I'm not clear that from what you've said, batch 5 is actually ready for people to download. Can you just clarify?
You can buy them on the CD in the show now.
Right.
We just finished playing it this morning.
Oh, okay. Right. Thank you.
But yeah, we'll do this. We'll throw a switch at some point during the day if we can keep having internet access throughout the day. We'll throw a switch, and then everything will appear on our website as well.
Right.
So it'll be in our source repository there.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Well, this year, or for this show, we've decided every show we do a bit more merchandising to try and raise a bit of funds to help pay for us to do things like coming to this show. So one of the things I want to stress is we don't pay ourselves, we just pay for events and we pay for the work that we're doing. So every show we do some new merchandise. We've had mouse mats before, we've had t-shirts, and at this show we've done some calendars for 2009. So if you come along to our stand, feel free to pick up a calendar. I think it's just £5. So
which conveniently you can swap for your special offer entry ticket.
Yes, you were all given a voucher on the way in, so potentially you can just swap that for a calendar. So yes, come and visit us at our stand. If you've got any questions about what does all this mean for you in particular, then just come to our stand and ask us the questions. We'll be happy to help.
Show you stuff on the iPhone. Thanks very much.
Okay, thank you.